Hey everybody, Dan here from Sci-Fi Models and Stuff, and today we're going to be showing you how to turn this into this. This kit is a 1/3 scale bust produced by Pestilence Studios and is based on the 2004 Guillermo del Toro Hellboy movie. This is one of my favorite movies, and as you may know, I'm a huge Hellboy fan. This is one of my favorite sculpts of the character, so I was really excited to get to work on this. This is the first of a 3-part video series, and we'll be covering how to paint red skin tones. This is probably the most difficult part of the entire build, so this video might run a little bit long. The next video is going to cover how to paint his right hand of doom and his undershirt, and finally the last video will focus on his jacket and some finishing touches to the model. Alright, let's jump right in. Okay, so we've got Hellboy all primed up in gray, and we are ready to start painting. So the first thing I'm going to do is his skin. That's going to be the hardest to do, I think. And we're going to do that first, so if we mess up and we need to strip the whole thing, we'll only have to strip that part. I don't expect having to strip his shirt or his jacket or the underneath or anything like that. So we're going to start with its head. Now there's a lot of people out there that have different recipes for Hellboy skin. I'm actually going to try something new this time, something I've never done. So I'll walk you through as I do it, but here's kind of the overview. We're going to start with the gray. We're going to do some pre-shaded highlights in white using a technique called zenithal or zenithal lighting. I'll probably look that up before I post this, but we'll see. So what that means is we're going to spray white down. So if light was coming down from here, the highlights would be up here, low lights down there. So we're going to start with the highlights. Then we're going to do some low lights, and we're going to do that in a khaki green. And you'll see why I do that later. From there, we'll go on with our main transparent reds. Then we'll do some more highlights and low lights, probably some washes, maybe some pastels to kind of bring out some of this texture that's sculpted into the skin. And that should be it. We're pretty lucky in that there's only a small section besides the head. So, a quarter of this model is skin. That's all hair. That shouldn't be too hard. Of course, we got the ears too. We can't forget that. So, all right, let's do it. Okay, so our white has been sprayed down. It's very subtle. You almost can't tell. You can see it's a little bit lighter than the surrounding coat and everything. That's okay. It's going to pop a little bit more once we get the low lights in. For low lights, I'm using XF58 olive green, and you'll see why in a little bit. I haven't tried this on a large scale figure, so we're going to try it out and see how it looks. Okay, and that's looking better. That's going to give us a nice dark pre-shade effect when we add our transparent red, which we're going to do right now. Okay, so you can see that the red really, forgot the ear there. All right, but the red really covered up the green. And when you layer red on green, it gives a nice brownish red color. And that's really what we're looking for with a low light. If you use black, it doesn't look quite right. It just looks like red on black. This makes it look a whole lot more natural. All right, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna respray that, get that set. We're going to layer the reds on top a little bit more. You see it's almost a little bit too light. And then we're going to come along with some dark red shading. Okay, so we touched up some of the red up top, finished the ear there, touched up that ear. Already it's looking pretty good. It's kind of hard to tell, but this would look 100 times better than just doing a plain red color. Okay, so now we're going to be doing some low lights again with this, a transparent Mars, which is kind of like a Hull brown or Hull red or a rust red. That's going to go real nicely. Now my airbrush is equipped with a needle limiter right here, which limits how far that needle can get pulled back. So by doing that, we're going to end up with a very small spray pattern, almost like switching to a fine detail airbrush. I probably should do that, but I'm being a little bit lazy. So let's see how it goes. Okay, now the video camera probably isn't picking it up very well, but there's some around the hairline, underneath the jaw, in those folds of skin. And in person, and once we get our final photographs done, they're really going to pop out. I mean, you would definitely notice it if they were not on there. Just right now, it's kind of hard to tell. So last thing we're going to do are our final highlights, and then our base skin tone is going to be done. We'll come back later with some pastels and washes, but that will be it for now. And this right here is a secret weapon. This is a yellow ink in cadmium yellow. This is very transparent and very light, so we're going to mist it over the top in the same areas we highlighted with our pre-shading, and that's really just going to make this come to life. So without further ado, now you really only need a few drops of this in your airbrush cup. It's very highly pigmented, so if you were to brush it like a normal paint, or I guess airbrush it like a normal paint, probably wouldn't work well. So what we're doing is we have the pressure set very low, and we're just going to mist it in our highlighted areas. Okay, and that's done. Now you see it gives it a very orangey touch by layering that yellow on there. And it really helps it to mimic the actual film prop, which has this kind of sheen here. Okay, so if you've done anything with painting skin or skin tones like that, you know it's really hard to tell how good of a job you did until you do some of the surrounding clothing or hair. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop some black into the airbrush, hit the hair, we're going to freehand that, block it out. We're going to be using a black ink, and here we go. And my camera actually died in the middle of that, so we're going to continue. What I'm doing is freehanding the edges so we get kind of a soft hairline. We may need to come back and clean that up later, and I can see a few spots already where we're going to need to do that. But all in all, I think that makes for a more natural hairline. So let's continue this. Okay, so after that little break, my card was full, so I had to empty it out, but caught most of this. Still a few cleanups to do around the ears mostly. We're going to have to paint the horn nubs, which are a little bit darker colors. I just noticed I forgot the goatee, and we'll have to do some touch-ups when we get to the end. But all in all, very pleased with the way that came out. The black's a little shiny right now. We're going to flatten that down. So up next are going to be the eyes, and those are going to be very hard, so we'll see how it goes. And one quick note, we are going to spray this with a dull coat to seal everything in. I should have been doing that this whole time. Okay, so our dull coat is dried, and I'm really pretty happy with the skin and hair. Like I said, we still got some details to go, but for first try, pretty damn happy with that. Okay, so eyes are going to be next, and these eyes are very, very small. So one thing I like to do is put black dots on where the pupil is eventually going to be. I find it's good to not have figures looking straight on, as it looks a little weird. I like to have them look to the side a little bit. So Hellboy's eyes are weird. And there's really no better way to say it. They seem to be based on lion's eyes. So a human eye, there's a lot of the white part showing, which if my pronunciation is correct, it's called the sclera of the eye. Animals do not have that. It's one of the main differences between animal and human eyes. And when you look at Ron Perlman's makeup in this movie, they gave him very animal-like eyes with almost no sclera showing. So we are going to replicate that. What I like to do first with eyes is paint the whole thing white and then paint the iris and pupil and all that in it. This is very small, so we're going to give it a shot. Even at 1/3 scale, it's very small. But we're going to give it a shot. I have everything sealed with a dull coat, but I'll be honest, guys, I'm a little bit nervous about this. So, without further ado, let's do it. I would normally really prefer to airbrush this, even for such a small area. But due to the shape and the way it's located, that is not going to be a possibility. So what we're going to do is mix up some white with a flow aid. We're going to put the magnifiers on, and we're really going to get up in there. Luckily, this is just going to take a few drops, but again, I really don't like to brush paint anything, especially white. So here we go. Okay, so everything is dried overnight. There's the eyes, and we're ready to start. So to start, I'm going to do an outline of the main iris. Normally you're going to do this in a darker color, usually a black or something like that. Since his eyes have a lot of orange and yellow tones, we're going to do the outline with kind of a darker orange color. And what we're going to do, it's probably going to be hard to see, but we're going to paint a main circle that's going to serve as the outline for the whole iris. So here we go. Okay, so looking at the reference images, we see that the next color, I guess the main color of the iris, is kind of a golden orange. So we've got some mixed up on the palette right here. And we're gonna continue painting the inside of the iris. There's just the tiniest bit of eye that's actually poking out the sculpt. Okay, for the next step, I've got a very thin yellowy orange mix that I'm going to use to paint some striations and lines in the iris using a very small brush, and we're just going to add a little more detail to it. Very difficult to get on camera. There's a few things that look like mistakes or splotches, but they're really not. It's just part of the lighting. So let that dry. We'll put in our pupils. Then we'll do any touch-ups that we need to do. Okay, and we're ready to do our pupil. We're just going to do a tiny dot of black right in the middle for that. And for this, we're going to be using a toothpick. There are probably better methods of doing this, but for getting just a nice even circle, toothpick works just fine. And we'll see how that came out. It's okay. Definitely need to do some touch-ups, especially on the whites. So I think what we're going to do is a little bit of oil around the edges and that sort of stuff before we put our final epoxy gloss coat into the eyes to make it shine. So we'll let this dry and we'll come back and do that. Okay, so that's had some time to dry and it looks okay. Needs some cleanup definitely, especially around the edges. So for that, we're going to be using oil paints, and specifically this color here, Flesh Shadow by this company that I don't know how to pronounce. This is a really great color. It's kind of an orange, red, just really versatile. So we're going to use that. I've got that paint thinned down almost like a wash here in the palette. I'm just going to apply that to the very edges of the eyes. We're probably going to use this later in the build too when we add some fine washes to the details. And we're just going to be touching that around. Capillary action is going to pull it around the eye. We are going to have to touch up just a little bit on that side, but all in all, that actually helps quite a bit. Pretty well happy with that. Right there on the edge. We're going to have to touch up with some acrylic paint. The oil isn't going to be able to take care of that, so great. Okay, and the last thing we did was actually add a little more white, because the sclera, although a little more movie accurate, didn't look very realistic. So there we go. Last thing we're going to do is add a little catch light, and then we'll be putting our clear coat on those eyes. Okay, so I'm really happy with the way that eye came out. Other one still needs some touch-up. So this one's done. What I'm going to do is mix up some 5-minute epoxy and apply that right in there. Okay, we got some 5-minute epoxy mixed up. I'm just going to apply a little bit on there with a toothpick. So that's going to give it a really good shine, and it's also going to protect it. Make sure we're getting in all the edges, and make sure we clean up any extra bits. Great. When that dries, that'll look great. So the eyes are basically done. I'm not real happy with them because they blend in a little bit too much. They are fairly accurate to the movie, again, in that there's no sclera, but it just doesn't look right on a statue. So I'm going to let that sit for now and move on, and we'll come back to that when we're doing our finishing touches on everything. Okay, so I ended up adding a little bit more white to the eyes. It's not exactly movie accurate, but it does look better in person. So next thing up is this shirt/jacket liner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask off all this red so we don't screw anything up. Then we're going to get on painting that. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. In the next video, we're going to cover painting the undershirt and also how to get a realistic finish on the right hand of Doom. If you like this video and if you learned something, please leave me a comment and feel free to subscribe. You can also check me out on Instagram at sci-fi models and stuff, link in the description.